and then Kevin. All units wait. Papa 4, repeat, Kevin. All units, channel 4 is defective. If you've got a message, change to channel 2 and repeat.
You may remember a time when tuning round your FM radio, hi-fi tuner or radiogram, it was possible to listen in on the police chasing criminals, following suspects and requesting backup. I don't, as I'm not old enough, so any recollections or tales are welcome in the comments. Naturally, many people used to engage in listening and would stay glued to the radio set all night, eavesdropping on criminals being apprehended and trying to work out if they were anywhere close by. This was all possible because during the 1950s right up to the 1980s, the police and fire service base stations transmitted in the frequency range between 97 and 103 MHz, which is today slap bang in the middle of the FM broadcast band. In the UK, the VHF FM broadcast band, or Band 2, was restricted to 88 to 97 MHz, and the BBC occupied the majority of it. In Europe, however, Band 2 covered 88 to 108 MHz, and so some receivers, not all, could tune to the full 88 to 108 MHz frequency range, enabling them to listen to the police. The 1979 World Administrative Radio Conference, or WARC, changed everything, however. An agreement made meant that the UK would have to make the whole of the 88 to 108 MHz FM band available for broadcast radio. There was also pressure from existing legal stations, pirates, and those who wanted to launch a station to expand the band in order to make available more frequencies. This meant the removal of a mobile radio allocation that sat between 97 and 108 MHz, the reason being to harmonise the broadcast band throughout Europe. I should point out that it wasn't just the police, fire and ambulance services that occupied this portion of spectrum. British Rail radio telephones and other railway communications, as well as local authorities such as the Gas Board, were packed in there too. The changes had to be implemented by December 31st, 1989, and once the mobile radio allocation was removed, the band could be opened up for commercial radio stations. The problem was, the police and other Home Office users occupied the majority of this particular portion of the band. The main transmitters at hilltop sites were between 97 and 103 MHz, and the mobiles were between 80 and 85 MHz. It took a long time for the Home Office to move the police and other emergency services out of the FM broadcast band because of delays and technical difficulties with the replacement systems, of course. While the 102 to 105 MHz range was the first to be opened up in 1983, the spectrum clearance involving the police and Home Office began in the main in 1987. 97 to 101 MHz was cleared first. There were also several new bands allocated and modified for the police and other Home Office users. 70.5 to 71.5 was newly allocated in the low-band VHF range. This was used by police, fire and ambulance base stations as well as mobiles. There was already an existing Home Office band at 80 MHz, used for land mobile and fixed, basically base and mobile. This was reduced to 80 to 81.5 MHz and 83.5 to 84 MHz from the original 80 to 85 MHz. 143 to 144 MHz and 152 to 153 MHz was newly allocated in the high-band VHF range for land mobile use. Two existing bands at 146 to 148 MHz and 154 to 156 MHz contain frequencies used by the Royal Observer Corps, or ROC network, but these were removed and given to the police for fixed and land mobile use. Two existing UHF bands, originally allocated in the 1970s, were extended downwards by 1 MHz to cover 450 to 453 and 464 to 467 MHz, and used by base and mobiles respectively. Fixed link bands at the top of high-band VHF remained as they were from 163.325 to 168.8 and 174.025 to 174.5. Remarkably, the migration was completed before the deadline on July 31st, 1989, 5 months early. While it was a major upheaval for the Home Office, who had to plan and implement the spectrum changes along with the equipment needed, the use of the old 97 to 103 MHz band meant that the public could eavesdrop on the police on their normal FM radios at home. The move offered them some privacy from the casual listener. Of course, this all changed as the migration coincided with the boom of radio scanners, which became popular in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Soon, anybody and everybody could listen to the most sensitive of police, government and military communications. This wouldn't be resolved until the rollout of Tetra Airwave and other encrypted government systems in 2005. Poorer quality FM receivers were better able to pick up AM police transmissions. An FM receiver would resolve an AM transmission by being slightly tuned either side of the carrier and not exactly tuned into the frequency. Sometimes when two police radios were keyed up together, it would cause the stereo light on the FM receiver to illuminate briefly. If talk-through was switched off, you'd hear one side of the conversation from the control room and beeps when the officer was talking. If it was turned on, you'd hear everything. Talk-through would be turned off for an extra layer of privacy, and also not to swamp every other user with comms they didn't need to hear. I heard one rumour that prisoners were only given AM radios so they couldn't eavesdrop in on the FM band. If anybody knows if this is true, then let us know in the comments. When Capital Radio began broadcasting on FM in London, they had complaints from the Metropolitan Police about interference. It was found that the police were operating on an unauthorised spare channel and were given a few days to move. When Signal Radio launched on 104.3 in Cheshire and Staffordshire, one of their straplines was on the right side of the law. With Red Rose on 97.3, the police in the middle, and Signal on 104.3, they were literally on the right side of the law. Some FM radio sets didn't go above 100 MHz, some went up to 104. It wasn't until around 1980 that tuning to 108 MHz was fairly universally provided, and so while FM radios were good for listening to the police, a lot of people weren't actually equipped to listen to the newly opened up FM broadcast band. Let me know if you have any recollections of hearing the police in the FM broadcast band in the comments below.